your Divas division.
Look whose show you're on, sweetie.
I did it, you bitch.
I think every single diva should be lining up and congratulating me and thanking for everything I've done for them.
You're going to find out why I am the boss.
Kamusta mga kontrabida? Welcome to Turning Heel with Troy Gonzalez. I am your host, yours truly, and we're back with another episode of Who's That Girl? My interview series where we sit down and chat with women from wrestling from all around the world, both inside and outside of the ring. But today we're going to a very, very special guest all the way from Finland, and she is a revolutionary woman, which, by the way, we're recording this on International Women's Day, so happy International Women's Day for all of you. And yeah, speaking of today's guest, she is a pioneer of professional wrestling in the country of Finland, and she's very talented. She's currently a double champion, and she's very glamorous because she's the current Stockholm Wrestling and Rings of Europe GLAM champion. So you guys better get ready, okay? Kontrabidas, handa na ba kayo? Who's that girl? It's Regina Rosendahl. Hi, Regina. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. I'm really excited to speak with you. As we are recording this, you just celebrated your 29th birthday recently. So how have your
Yep.
birthday celebrations been going?
I mean, they've been going well. I was a little sick right before that. But yeah, it was just traditional family and a bunch of cake. So yeah, it was good.
All right. We love a very simple yet, festive celebration of birthdays on here. But, you just turned 29 and this is your last year in your 20s. So what would you say is something that you have learned in your 20s?
Wow. I mean, probably everything. I've been wrestling for all of my 20s. So that has been the biggest part of my life, and like kind of like what everything else in my life has to conform with. But yeah, I've been learning about myself, working with my mental health a lot, fighting for equal rights and understanding my own privilege as well. And that, yeah, I guess I've become an adult in a way. I still don't feel like an adult a lot of times, but I guess I should. I'm almost 30, but yeah.
I love that. Well, you still look very young, very beautiful, and you, as I did say earlier, you were a pioneer and a revolutionary woman in the Finnish wrestling scene. But before we do start with anything crazy, would you like to give yourself a quick introduction for my listeners who may not be super familiar with your work? Who is Regina Rosendahl?
Sure. Well, basically, I'm a professional wrestler and from Finland, like you said. I've been revolutionizing the Finnish wrestling scene. We are now a feministic and diverse scene in FCF wrestling. I'm also a matriarch in the entire Nordic region. And yeah, I've been doing this for almost a decade, and I'm also a feminist, an activist, a witch, and a satanist. So yeah, that also, I guess it all kind of shows in my wrestling, or at least in my attire and my character work and social media as well. Yeah, I never shut up about those human rights. So yeah.
All right, all right. Well, as you guys may have heard, she does a lot of stuff, and she helped revolutionize Finnish professional wrestling, especially Finnish women's wrestling. And I'm super excited to speak with you today. But as you did mention, I also saw on your Instagram that you were a fan of the horror theme and genre growing up. So I wanted to ask, how did you get yourself introduced to horror as a whole theme and genre, and how did you grow to like it?
Wow. I don't think I've ever been asked that. I don't remember like a specific moment. I remember I have seen some Stephen King's or movies of Stephen King's books, like The Children of the Corn probably must have been one of the first ones that I saw, and then The Exorcist as well. But yeah, I guess that was a bit traumatizing for a 10-year-old to see The Exorcist. But
Right.
but I don't know. I've seen horror movies since I was very little. And I took a little break from that, but now I watch horror like almost weekly. It's one of my favorite genres. Yeah, and especially like the Halloween franchise. I don't know why, but like that has been so close to my heart. Always. I love the Michael Myers character, and I don't like it makes like it's so goofy in a way as well. So I like that.
True, true. Right. Oh my gosh. I feel like you would get along with Ruby Roberts a lot, which I believe you guys have a match soon.
I
Because
mean,
Ruby
she's
also
challenging for my for my
Oh,
belt
that's
this
true.
Saturday. So I don't know if we're gonna be that great friends.
That is true, but you guys do love the horror genre, and I really feel like I
Mhm.
need to get into it soon because I said this in my interview with Ruby, but I am a scaredy cat. I cannot handle like crazy traumatizing movies, especially with like violence, but I feel like with the proper introduction, I could really get into it. So, do you have like a horror movie recommendation for me, given that I am a beginner?
Oh, I don't know. Like if you, especially, I don't think because usually I would say like I love the Saw franchise the because I love the psychology behind it and the stories. But that's like super gory and super. It's not like it's not for a beginner.
I
So I
see,
would
I see.
go with maybe like more of a psychology, like a thriller almost kind of. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe start with the classics. Maybe start with The Exorcist, um, The American Psycho, something like that, and then start like easing your way from that.
Right. All
Yeah.
right, all right. I'll see what I can do. Hopefully, I don't scare my pants off in the middle of the movie, but I definitely will take your recommendation into my consideration. And now let's talk more about your personal advocacies. You said that you are a feminist, and one of the things, when it comes to being a female wrestler or even just a female entertainer in general, is body positivity, which you promote absolutely all the time on your socials. And I wanted to know, since you are also a wrestling trainer with wrestling students, is body positivity something that you prioritize teaching your students as they develop into female athletes and wrestlers?
Definitely, yeah. I don't only teach women. I teach all genders. And I think it's very important for everyone because it's not easy for the men either. They do have more boxes that they can fit into. There are more different types of acceptable male bodies for like male wrestlers than there has been for women,
Right.
which it is getting better, but we're still like very much behind. And I think when you go out there, it's super important to have that mindset of that I belong and it's okay. Like whatever it is I look like, it's perfectly fine and it's more than fine. I'm a fucking superstar and I'm money. And that's very hard for I know like a lot of women, and it's a cultural thing as well in Finland to take up space. It's very like very reserved culture.
I see.
So it's very hard. That's like the mental part of wrestling is to me, and what I've seen in my teaching as well. That's the biggest challenge in wrestling. Like it's physically like super hard as well, but it's still easier than the mental part. And
Right.
that's something. Body positivity is something that we also um, we demand from our audiences as well. Like there can be no body shaming, no racism, no like not no sexism, nothing. Like if we hear anything like that, we will just kick them out. Like it's a safe space for everyone to enjoy
Right.
the art form of professional wrestling.
Right, right. And I'm really happy with how inclusive, from what I've seen, specifically in Fight Club Finland, FCF, how
Hmm.
inclusive your roster is when it comes to talent, and not just talent, but also with staff. And I'm really, really happy to see how much wrestling has changed over the years as well when it comes to inclusivity. But I wanted to ask, since you are one of the pioneers of Finnish professional wrestling, how would you say like the wrestling scene in Finland has changed over the years since it began?
Well, it began like way before I started. It began like 20 years ago almost. So,
I see.
but I do know, um, I have friends who have been there since like the beginning, and it has not been very welcoming. I know the Finnish wrestling scene has been like, wrestling wise, we have been a bit ahead of everyone else in this part of Europe. Um, but diversity wise or organization wise, we haven't. But when I started, 9-ish years ago, yeah, it was very stuck in the 80s, I guess. It was very much, this is what wrestling should be, and it should not be anything else, and this is what a female wrestler's place is. And yeah, it was just those 6-minute matches,
I
in
see.
between the guys' matches, like usually just before the main event, to be like the popcorn break or whatever. Um, but yeah, I did that for like 2 years until I like realized like I can't, like this is not, like I've never wanted to do anything but wrestling. Like wrestling has always been that thing since I was a kid. So to come to realize like, okay, so if I want to be a wrestler, I can't like live up with like with what my beliefs are and how my what my values are in life. So it's like, yeah, I guess I came to a wall, and I just realized like, if this continues the way that it has, I will have to quit wrestling. And that was very heartbreaking.
Right.
Like that was like, my biggest heartbreak, I think, in my life. And then so, things happened, and then we kind of started building the change. We demanded a new chairperson for the organization, and from that, we just started doing everything more inclusive, more diverse, and yeah, now we're bigger than ever. We have more women than we have ever had. We have non-binary people. We have different ethnicities. We have different shapes and sizes. We have different ages. And not just wrestlers, but other performers and people who are working, with us in other ways. And we've never had this much audience before. We're making more money than we have ever before. Um, and yeah, and the audience is very diverse as well. Like, especially, gender wise, it's getting like, it's not just men. Like some shows, there are less than half of the people are men. So that's the right direction in my head. So yeah, but we still have a lot of work to do, obviously, because it's still it's still like less than 10 active women in FCF wrestling. So it's not a lot, but it's more than ever in the history of the Nordic countries.
Right.
So yeah.
True. So it's definitely a step in the right direction, no matter how small it may be, because at least it's going towards a perhaps even bigger future for women and non-binary people in wrestling, especially in the
Yes.
Finnish wrestling scene. But you did mention that it's important to you to have even more women in ring performers in the wrestling scene over there in Finland. So, in your opinion, how important is it for you to have a good amount of female wrestlers in Finland?
Very important. It's not only like we need representation to of women on the shows to have more women in the audience. And then we need that representation because we want women to come into the organization and run different teams and be involved in it, because it's been so male dominated the whole time, and it hasn't, as a male dominated organization, it didn't grow, and it didn't make money. So I'm not like, it's not only the right thing to do to have more women, to have more non-binary people, it's not only ethically right, it is also wise in a business sense.
Right,
Like,
right.
yeah, it also makes money. So
For sure. Right, right. And I feel like that's something that women have been trying to prove over the years, like to prove that women in entertainment, not just women in wrestling, that women in entertainment draw views, draw money, and so on and so forth. And so
yes,
they always have to fight for that spot on the card in the wrestling world, like to fight for that spot on the card where, people will be tuning in. And so I'm really happy that somehow, the Finnish wrestling scene has progressively been more inclusive of the female talent. And I hope it really does grow more in the future, because there are people such as myself who do watch wrestling primarily for the women. So I'm really, really hoping to see even bigger changes in the future. And I'm pretty sure that with your help, things are definitely happening over there. But now let's talk more about your wrestling career. And I've listened to some of your previous interviews in the past, and you've mentioned that women who inspired you in wrestling include the Bella Twins and AJ Lee, among others. So tell me a bit about what made you look up to them so much, and what made them make you pursue wrestling.
I think when I started watching wrestling, it was like 20 years ago. So it was a different place.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there were other women as well during that time, but like the Bella Twins, like that's who I remember from that time and who I most connected with. I have a sister who we used to look a lot like people always thought we were twins, and they
Really?
always they still mix us up sometimes. Even our mom does. Like, so so I think that was a very, because seeing that like sister relationship that they had, that made me like connect to them as like more. And I think since like 2014 or so, when like the Bella Twins were getting like more and more airtime, as well as like the new crop with Becky
Right.
Lynch and Charlotte and all that.
Yeah.
That's when I kind of fell in love with them even more. And the work that the Bella Twins have done for the women's like revolution is insane, like how much they've done. And I feel like they don't get the credit for that, which is like, obviously
Right.
they were the villains in that story, like on screen villains, but
Yeah.
that's not what they were like behind the scenes. Obviously I don't know that, they might be like fucking devils, I don't know, but like
Right.
from my perspective, and what I've seen and what I've like heard and listened to interviews with other people as well, like that's how I see them. I see them as like these icons of the women's wrestling revolution, alongside with Paige and AJ Lee and Natalia, and then obviously the next wave, so to speak, which was Charlotte, Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, Bailey.
Right.
But like that, the four horsewomen could have never, like that would not have happened without the work of the Bella Twins, of the Mickey James, of Victoria, of like that.
Right.
It doesn't just happen overnight. So exactly. Yeah, and obviously AJ Lee coming in, being so different, and I guess maybe I felt like I was different. Now I don't feel so different anymore. Like I'm just like every female wrestler out there. Like I don't know, but like I really connected to her, back then, and the fact that she could talk, because I always love a talking wrestler. Like that, the promos
Right.
are my best. That's the best part. So yeah, AJ Lee, love her. Hope she gets back in the ring somewhere.
Same. I
We
am
don't
wishing
know.
for that to happen as well.
Yeah.
Only time will tell. But I really loved hearing that the Bellas and AG were some women that you looked up to in terms of professional wrestling, because this was also the era of wrestling where I sort of got really invested, and this is like the era where I grew up in, and eventually became super invested in women's wrestling. Even outside of WWE, which sort of like led me to making this whole show and like paying homage to the women who contributed to the revolution for women's wrestling. So I don't know. It just makes me happy to hear other people like gushing over the same people. But yeah, enough talk about the Bellas and AJ. This episode is about you. So let's talk more
Mm.
about you as an in ring performer. But with every performer, every wrestler, of course, they gotta make some additional coin with their merchandise, and you have amazing merchandise like your logos, your I think you have like an animated version or like a drawing of yourself on your website. So tell me a little bit about like your designs of your merchandise. Like, do you illustrate these yourselves? Do you know someone who makes these for you? Tell me all about them.
Well, actually, the logo that I use, which is just the two R's and the pentagram, that is made by the same guy who does the graphics for Women of Wrestling. So WoW, where
Oh,
AJ Lee works.
right.
So yeah, he's actually like who makes like most of my, like, if I want to do like a social media ad or something, he usually does it for me. So yeah, he's my guy. But I also have friends who know how to do stuff like that. The picture is from this track artist who's also makes these illustrations, and they have made so many of myself like before just for fun, and then I decided to buy one to use for my merch.
Right.
So that's Taneliko, which is, yeah. But Lady Clapback is their drag name. So if you're trying to
Oh, I
find
see.
them, yeah. But yeah, so but I think I've always been very interested in the branding and in the aesthetic. Um, whether it's my gear or my social media or my merch, I like doing it.
Like your merchandise, the moment I saw it, I was like, these are really, really nice designs. And
Mm,
if you guys want to get some of your Regina Rosendahl merch, we'll be sure to plug her website over in the description of my episode and maybe later on at the end of the interview. But once again, the designs were amazing. And I didn't know that the Regina Rosendahl logo with the two R's was also made by the one who makes like the digital media for Women of Wrestling, which is really, really
yeah,
interesting. That's a
yeah,
really good connection, I will say. We love connections over here.
yeah.
Yeah, let's talk more about your matches. So, from what I've seen, which I really hope cagematch.net is a really credible source, because I looked through your match catalog and you have faced the top women of wrestling from all around the world, which I'm pretty sure you already knew this, but this makes you one of the top women in professional wrestling as well. But you've had matches against the likes of Tony Storm, Aisha Raymond, Alpha Female, and so on and so forth. But I will say, I do want to celebrate your wrestling career. So, in your opinion, what's one match that you would say you are most proud of in your career? I know it's a bit difficult.
It's very difficult. It's difficult because I'm never actually happy with my work. Like
Really?
I always hate everything I do. um, okay, hate is a strong word, but like as soon as a match is done, I'm never happy. So it's like I know it might be a bit exhausting to work with me because as soon as we get backstage, and it's like like, like no, but like I guess I would be most proud of the matches where I've been able to help other wrestlers, if
I see.
whether it's the girls that I've trained. Obviously I trained the guys as well, and that's cute, but I'm most interested in like growing the women's division and growing
Right.
the women that we have here. Um, and also like I want to make sure that the Finnish wrestling scene will be diverse and it will be high quality wrestling even when I leave. So that's why I'm like so invested in making sure that they know what they're doing and they learn how to take responsibility themselves and they learn how to make decisions for themselves as well. Um, but I would say I had a match but at the end of last year against one of my girls, Stella, who is this masked alien character. Yeah, she was. It was a title defense against her for the Stockholm Wrestling GLAM championship, and it was a 2 out of 3 falls match. It was her first time wrestling outside of Finland. It was a lot for her to deal with, and she did so great. She was so good, and she was so easy to work with, and the crowd loved her. So yeah, I think right now on the top of my head, that's the match that I'm most proud of.
Well, I'm really happy that you are proud of that match, and I feel like with the whole very critical of your own matches afterwards, I feel like that's just a sign of you wanting to improve yourself as an entertainer, as a performer, which I feel like, there's a saying that we are our own biggest critiques, or I don't know, I don't think that's how it goes, but you guys know what I'm talking about. But I feel like it's just a sign of wanting to do better and wanting to help promote, women's wrestling as a women's wrestler yourself. So yeah, but you do you, girl. You are doing amazing. And speaking of doing amazing, let me give you one match that I was very proud of you for. It was very recent because you were recently robbed. Yes, robbed. I will be using that word. You were robbed of the ICW Women's World Championship after a false finish in a match against then defending champion Molly Spartan. So, what was the whole experience like getting that false finish? You had that championship in your hand already. So, what was going through your mind during the moment?
I just thought like I made history. I brought like that was the most important title that has ever been defended in Finland. And in that moment, I fully believed that I made history. I I'm taking women's Finnish, especially like Finnish women's wrestling, so many steps forward with this.
Right.
Um, yeah, and then Molly kind of crushed my dreams, but that's kind of what she does, isn't it?
She does. She does do that a lot. But what I do want to ask is, as of the time we're recording this, Molly is no longer the ICW Women's World Champion. And speaking of that championship, that title got so much attention the past few days on social media with her whole match against Rio, who
Mm-hmm.
uncrowned Molly to become champion, and we've all seen the crazy spot. And yeah, Rio is your new ICW Women's World Champion. So here's my question for
Yes.
you. I did say that you were robbed of that title,
Mm-hmm.
which I will be advocating for, but I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
know, like, will you be asking for a future rematch for the title this time with Rio?
I feel I never fairly lost that match.
Right. Not at all.
So yeah, I think I would be more than deserving of a rematch. Obviously it's not Rio's fault, but I think she's probably a fighting champion. I think she wouldn't
She
mind.
is.
So I don't know, maybe I'll bring her to Finland to do that.
All right. All right. So, only time will tell, but yeah, you
Mm-hmm.
did say Rio is a fighting champion based off of how she presents herself. So, come on,
Yes.
Rio, let's defend that title all over the UK, all over Europe. Let's make it
Mm-hmm.
happen. All right? We want to see it.
Yes.
But before I do let you off, I wanted to ask, it's 2023, it's March, it's still very early on in the year. What are some of your goals for 2023 as an in-ring performer?
Well, I mean, I'm feeling very positive about where wrestling is taking me. Um, and I think I only have like one goal left to do in Europe,
Okay.
and it looks like I'm doing it in July. So then it's like Europe is basically done, right? So I don't know. Maybe I should try another continent then. That would be my goal, to wrestle outside of Europe this year. Yeah, and by next year I would like to be fully living off of wrestling.
Ooh, full time. All right. All
Hmm.
right. I see. I see. I mean, it's definitely one of the most difficult, I feel like, most difficult goals when it comes to wrestling is to, make it a full time job. But I feel like, I mean, given your work ethic and how much you help empower other women, I feel like it's not very far from, your current standpoint. So I'm really, really rooting for you. And yeah, you better get those titles. I know you already have two,
Hmm.
which are already heavy on the shoulders, but you have a
Hmm.
whole arm's length.
I
You could get like,
know.
I don't know, three more. How much more can you carry?
Maybe like at least like five. I think I could get like four more in my arms, and then one
Right.
on the waist, maybe two on the waist if one is in the back. So
True.
like there's still room.
Right. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see for that to happen. But Regina, thank you so much for joining me here on the Turning Heel podcast. It was lovely speaking with you. Before I do let you off, would you like to promote your upcoming bookings, upcoming matches, your socials, and especially your website? Because they need to know about the merch.
I mean, yeah, go look at my merch. It's Regina's shop. We can put the link somewhere. Follow me on Instagram. That's where I'm mostly active on. I do have Facebook if you're a Facebook person, and I am also on Twitter. But that's usually just feministic rants about how women's wrestling is not presented correctly.
Right.
But you can hop on that train as well with me. Yeah, I'm working this spring. I'll be working a couple of times in Denmark in body slam wrestling. Then I'm doing Stockholm wrestling a couple of times. And then I will be in Austria for Rings of Europe, as well as obviously in my
Ooh.
home of FCF Wrestling. So, I'm quite busy, but I hope to see you all in some capacity. And yeah, follow my socials and subscribe to my OnlyFans so you can help me get more merch and stuff done.
There you go. So be sure to check out all of our platforms. We love supporting our female wrestlers. And yeah, I'll be sure to leave all of our links in the description of this episode on Anchor, Spotify, YouTube, etc., etc. So you guys better show some support for Miss Regina. But Regina, thank you so much again for coming on the show. I really hope you enjoyed your time here. It was great meeting you.
I did. This was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And for all of you contributas, you know the drill. For the latest news on Turning Heel with Troy Gonzalez, be sure to follow the show on all platforms. You can listen to your favorite podcasts on by checking out my link tree. That's linktr.ee/Turning Heel podcast. So thank you for all of your support, contributas, and see you guys in the next episode. Bye.